It took me, to be honest, a few years to actually realize that, something bigger was going on here that I needed other people's advice and help on. I think a couple of friends just said, "Why don't you see a counsellor?" kind of thing. And at first I was just like, no, I don't need a counsellor. I know myself better than anyone else. I know how to deal with it. I mean, of course I didn't, but that's what I thought. So once I got to university, I started to see different counsellors, and then I guess, once you learn new things, you realise what you've been missing out on. You think, gosh, I could have learned this earlier. On the other side, you have to be careful, I think, not to rely on the counsellor to solve your problems, because that's not their job. And I think it's easy to fall into that trap of, I've done the hard work of making the appointment, now I'll let the counsellor do the work. But, you have to really make sure you apply what you learn. That's a really big part of it. I had a couple of other friends who just were quite inspirational in the sense that they just kept listening and listening and listening, and that showed me, how to be non-judgmental about someone, how to be encouraging. And occasionally, I probably had some people who wouldn't necessarily call friends, but they're quite frank about, their thoughts about how I was, and they were quite helpful as well, in the sense that they weren't afraid to tell me where they thought, I needed to back my ideas up, or to be more proactive. The turning point for me was a slightly unusual one, I suppose. I'd fallen in love with a girl who I thought was the answer to all my emotional worries, and for probably a month, I'd say, I was completely free of any negative feeling about myself and life, because we actually got along so well that, believe it or not, she asked me to marry her within a month, which is not your traditional way of doing things. But within about 2 to 3 months, things, the old Jamie came back, and again, there's all these doubts. And as soon as the doubts creep in, then of course that affects the way you relate to people, and then you have more reason for doubts, and then, so on. That vicious circle came right back straight away. In some ways, particularly if you've been in depression for a long time, depression can get a little bit comfortable, and ironically it's breaking, because we are comfortable with it, that it makes it so hard to get over it. And I think that's something that other people can't understand. They think you're just being lazy, but it's actually, depressive thinking can be an addiction like any other, and it does take a lot of hard work to get yourself out of it. One thing that I sort of picked up along the way was the idea of affirmations, but not your stereotypical affirmations in the sense that, I'm a great person. Because I think when you're feeling like, when you're feeling that low, the idea I'm a great person is actually really hard to digest or believe, or, it just doesn't ring true. So I used to carry, instead of that kind of affirmation, I used to carry these cards around with me. And one of them said, for example, "You're greater than you think you are." And that's a lot more that was really believable to me. Sometimes you need to talk to yourself like a coach, to really sort of enthuse yourself. And sometimes you need to talk to yourself like a parent and soothe yourself. And I think it's knowing which voice to use, which is really, really important, and just coming up with creative things or stock phrases you can use on yourself when you're feeling low, or, like I say, making your own little pack of cards, and when you're feeling low, just pull them out and have a look, and those sorts of things can definitely help. I mean, they're not the answer, but they're definitely an important tool. At the time, depression felt like the worst thing that had ever happened to me, but because I was able to learn from it, I turned it into the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'm unbelievably blessed, I think, to have gone through the process of very, very deep depression.